Greetings, I am Zorch. Welcome to the Excelsior, my airship, and today I'm going to talk to you about a board game called Kings of Air and Steam. And this is one of my favorite board games at the moment, if not my most favorite board game. I kickstarted it back in December of 2011, and then it kind of dropped off the face of the earth. It took them a while to get the development done because I guess they had some issues with the artists, but it all came out in the end. And it's an amazing game. It's a pick up and deliver game for 2 to 7 players, and it takes place in a steampunk universe. That was really all I needed to know that I was going to like it. I backed it immediately after I heard about it. It was one of the first Kickstarter projects that I ever backed, and I certainly don't regret it. This game was one of Tasty Minstrel Games' first Kickstarters, and it showed at the time, because at that point, everybody was new to Kickstarter, and nobody had gotten it quite right yet. And I'll tell you, if Tim Schafer at Double Fine Games can't get it right, then nobody else is going to either. In the end, they got it all straightened out. I got my copy. I'm super happy with it, and it really did kind of solidify my love of Kickstarter in general. It's also interesting that Tasty Minstrel ran into some problems with shipping at the end of the Kickstarter, which lends a kind of odd synchronicity to the game itself, because it's all about shipping. So, who knew? Anyway, I'm going to unbox the game, and then I'm going to set it up and teach you how to play it. I will link in the description to take you to another video where I will do a gameplay run-through that's about mid-game, where I try to demonstrate all of the different various aspects of the game and show you how it plays. So, here we go. Kings of Air and Steam. Let's take a look at what you get in the box. First of all, this is the Kickstarter edition, but as far as I know, it's the same as every other version out there. You get the rulebook. As an added bonus in this video, you're going to see how I pack everything into this box. If you just throw it all in there, it will not all fit, so you can see my special little method I've got here for packaging. Of course, there's the paper money. This is really nice double-sided money. As far as paper money goes, this is probably some of the best you'll see. I keep all of the movement cards, player cards, and various tokens for each team is separately bagged so that they're easy to pick apart. And of course there are 7 of these, 1 for each team. There are the market tiles. These can be flipped over to show that a city no longer is demanding goods. That'll make more sense later during the explanation. There's the market board. There are the 7 player boards, and there are 1 of these for each team. If you're just using the basic game, they're all identical. But if you're using the normal game, they have different stats on them. There are the 5 different types of goods: textiles, food, gold, chemicals, and machinery. And I also, the luxury goods, the gold goods, were originally in kind of a brown paint that looked almost exactly like the food, so I spray painted these metallic myself. I also spray painted the silver a little bit extra metallic as well. There are the 7 airship minis, which are really big and cool. Then there are the 7 different player color depots, and then I also keep the upgrade markers inside of the little bags with the depots. Then there are the bumpers, the edge bumpers, and finally, another game that uses big hex pieces. There are 2 ways to play the game, the basic version and the normal version. The basic version has some of the more complex rules stripped out of it, so it's a little bit more accessible to new gamers and people who you might just be introducing this game to. Regardless of which version you're playing, all players will always have access to this basic layout of stuff. There are 10 depot markers, the 2 upgrade markers that are placed on the train and airship tracks. There's the airship marker, and then the movement cards. And the movement cards have different values on them, but every player will have the same set of movement cards at all times. Here's a closer look at a player board flipped to its basic side. I mentioned earlier in the normal game that some of these values will be different. The only thing that this is true about are these two rows right here, the diamond value and the cargo rating. The two values are linked together and will always move at the same time when you upgrade your airship. The cargo value on the bottom indicates the number of goods that you can carry inside of your airship. The diamond value is basically the technological level of your engines, just how advanced they are and how flexible they are. The player board doubles as a nice player aid also, because it has the game rounds listed as well as all the actions that you can take on your turns. The train upgrade track is one of the more difficult to explain concepts in this game, because there is no actual train that you will ever see on the board. It just indicates the number of stops that your train can make on the board. There's a handy little scoring sheet over in the corner that will help you total up all your points at the end of the game. Every dollar that you earn is worth 1 point. Every depot that you've built is worth 10. If you manage to upgrade your airship all the way to the right, you will get 15 points, and the train will give you 5, 15, and 30 points, depending on which of these last 3 spaces that your upgrade marker is on at the end of the game. In the advanced game, you'll be playing on the other side of the board, and this has different values for the diamond ratings and the cargo capacity of each of the 7 different airships. If you're playing the normal game, you'll want to make sure that you use the appropriate stack of movement card that matches the airship, because each one has one unique movement card that gives each team special powers. If you're playing on the basic side, you'll want to make sure that you remove that one card from the deck. Another important addition to the normal game are the double-sided character cards. Players will have to pick which character they'd like to use for the rest of the game between the two of them, and each one gives a unique special power. The final main difference between the normal and basic games is the use of the first player marker. In the basic game, the first player marker passes clockwise at the end of each round and is used to break disputes during turn order. During the normal game, the number printed on the character card is actually what is going to break ties during turn order disputes. At the bottom of the board are the 4 slots that you will be using for programming your airship's movement for each turn. This movement planning is all done simultaneously in secret, and there's no time limit. Movement cards are all revealed simultaneously, and then movement occurs in alphabetical order. If there are any ties, they are broken either by the first player marker or by the number printed on the double-sided character cards. This card allows the airship to move 1 hex in any direction. This card also allows 1 movement in any direction, but there's a diamond at the bottom of it. Anytime that there are diamonds showing on the card, as soon as you turn them over, you must compare them to the diamond rating on your airship track. As long as your number of diamonds showing does not exceed the number of diamonds on your upgrade track, you're fine. If, however, a player had flipped over this next card and they only have 1 diamond on their upgrade track, this means that this turn would have to be skipped, and the character would not get to move or take an action that turn. So as you can imagine, that would be really painful. Before I go into the specifics of movement, I'm going to show you how to set up the game. First, each player gets a player board. In the basic game, it doesn't matter which one. If you're playing the normal game, each player will have to choose one of the boards. Each player will need to pick a color to use and take all the pieces that go with it. Also at the beginning of the game, each player will get $12 from the bank. This is an example of the average board that's going to make up the play area. It's divided up into a bunch of smaller hexes, and these hexes are what the airships are going to be moving in between. Also on the boards are factories, which are the round buildings with 1 large good inside and a predominant color. Cities, which are the named hexes with 5 goods and a color that matches the factories. Then the links, which are the rails that connect city to city. Now you'll notice that there are no rails that go to factories, and that's where the airships come in. Goods will appear first at factories, where they will need to be picked up by the airships. After an airship has picked up a good, it needs to be delivered to a depot. As soon as it's delivered to a depot, the goods can then be shipped into cities using the rails. But first, let's finish setting up the board. I always love these modular playing boards because they allow for huge variability in the starting setup. These are all being placed out randomly. I'm setting this game up for 4 players. Make sure that you use the bumpers that are provided to fill in the gaps at the end after you've placed all of the main tiles. Now, place 1 good on each factory of the matching type. Next, put out the market board with one good of each type in the $4 space. Set up the bank somewhere near the board. As per the rules, there are two different ways that you can set up the market in the game. The first way is to remove one of the market demand tiles of each color and then put them into a draw bag and randomize that way. The other way that you can do it is to place all of the tiles into the draw bag, draw out 5 at random without looking, return them to the box, and then use that as the market. That's called the uncertainty variant. And it's actually the one that I prefer, and it's the one I'm going to use for this demonstration. And I should note that this bag does not come with the game. I just find it a lot easier to use this to draw out of for the tiles than it is to just make a stack to draw from. Plus, this is more interesting and more fun to me. In this particular game, green will be the Da Vinci, piloted by Isaac the robot. His special ability is perpetual motion. Once per turn, after your action, you may spend one of your perpetual motion tokens to take an additional action. The blue player will be controlling the Godfather, and it will be piloted by Thaddeus Birch. His special power is to intimidate. He may use opponent's depots for free. Normally you have to pay a toll, but he's a pirate. Arr. The red player will be piloting Kings over Aces, and also will be piloted by Sebastian King. His special ability is gambling. When delivering goods, you may bet up to $3. For each dollar bet, you draw a gamble token at random. If the token matches your delivery, collect an extra $2 per delivered good. Finally, the yellow airship will be the Sphinx, and it will be piloted by Eva Blaine with her new construction power. As an action, you can use your track tiles to create a new link connecting 2 cities. Pay $1 per tile used. Tiles may not cover existing rails, and you may place a depot on the new link for free. In a basic game, first player is decided at random, but since this game is going to be the normal game, we're actually going to use the priority number printed on the double-sided character sheets. That would actually make Isaac the first player because his number is 2. However, in the first step of the game, all players are going to place down 1 depot on a link, and this is where their airship is going to start. When you're doing this process, you start with the player to the right of the first player, which in this case is going to be Thaddeus Birch, and go in reverse order until you get back to the first player. I can't stress enough how critical this first placement can be. You really have to look at where the factories are and where the cities are that require the goods that are coming from those factories. Now the airships are placed with the depots. At this point, the game is ready to play. And this is when it's really handy to have the game round printed right onto the player boards. The first item of business during every game round is to set up the new market. That's easy enough to do. Simply reach into the bag, pull out 3 new tiles, and place them in the empty spaces. Goods move up along this track based on how many have appeared here in these slots. Food has come out twice, so it goes up 2 times. Chemicals has come out once, so its corresponding marker has moved up once. This makes the food now the most valuable commodity in the game at $6 each. Chemicals are at 5, and everything else is at 4. Now that the market's been set up, more cubes are placed out based on what appeared here. So each food factory is now going to produce 2 more food, and each chemical factory is going to produce 1 more chemical. The next step in the game round happens simultaneously for all players. Everyone plans their airship movement. That involves a lot of staring at the board and trying to figure out where your airship is going to go. We use the movement cards to plan our movement. And again, these are all the same for everybody except for that 1 card that is different for each team. Of course, normally airships would be moving all over the board, but just for this example, I'm going to be moving only the yellow airship so that I can demonstrate how movement works. First, I'll run through the actions real fast. You get 1 action after each of your movements. The actions are building a depot, upgrading your airship, upgrading your train, shipping goods, doing a route adjustment, and soliciting funds. Now that yellow has planned all of its movement, and we'll assume that everyone else has also, we start to resolve the cards one at a time. Starting with number 1, all players will flip over the first card. Yellow's played a 2. That means that out here on the board, the yellow airship must move 2 spaces. Airships can move in straight lines and they can make gradual turns. They can't make sharp turns or go backwards. So since yellow played 2, she's going to move 2 spots and pick up this cube. Loading and unloading goods to and from your airship can only be done at depots that you control and factories. It is also something that happens automatically for free, so you don't have to spend an action to do it. Anytime you move, you can load and unload. So now Yellow has an action to take. She's going to spend $4 and build another depot. There's a lot of reasons for this. The main thing, of course, is that at the end of the game, each depot built is going to be worth 10 points, and that's a huge return. There's another reason why Yellow wanted to do this, and it's all part of the master plan that will be revealed shortly. After all other players had moved their airships and taken their actions, we would move on to the next register and flip it over. This time, Yellow reveals another 2, also with the letter C. This move is going to look pretty familiar. They're just going to turn around and move 2 spaces back to the depot they came from, and drop off this single cube. Now, Yellow is going to use her action to upgrade her train. She'll pay $2 to the bank, and move the upgrade marker up 1 space. I've already committed an oops. She paid $4 for that depot that she placed earlier. Depots cost $4 whenever they're placed onto an unoccupied link. For example, this link doesn't have any other depots on it, so placing a depot on that link will only cost $4. Had she decided to place it here instead, she would have to pay $7, because green already has a depot on that link. Now, after all the airships have moved and taken their actions again, we'll move on to the third register. In this case, it's a 3. Yellow now is going to move 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and pick up only 2 of these cubes, because her cargo capacity is currently only 2. Maybe she should have spent one of those actions to upgrade her airship. Of course, she would have had to do it twice before it would have done any good. This time, Yellow's action is going to be to take this gold cube and to ship it into this city that requires gold. This is where the train comes in. Your train starts out only making 1 stop, which is perfectly fine for this trip, this depot to this city. The number of hexes that a train passes through is completely irrelevant. It's just the number of depots and the destination city that is important. However, for trips going through multiple depots, you would have to have a higher powered train, and that's why she's already thought ahead and upgraded the train level to 2. Yellow does get to collect $4 for shipping this 1 cube into the city. Not much, but better than nothing. We'll say that all the airships have moved again, and we move on to the 4th register. Yellow is going to move 3 spaces back to that depot again, drop off these 2 cubes, and this time, she's going to ship them into this city. So to get cubes into a city, there have to be 2 things. You have to be able to have depots on every link connected to that city. So in this case, Yellow could not ship in this direction, because there is no depot here. But she can ship in this direction. To do so, however, her train has to have a power of 1, 2, 3 to actually be able to make it. So, unfortunately, she will not be able to ship this turn because her train power is only at 2. It is perfectly legal to move these cubes into the next depot and then do another shipment later. However, that's a bit wasteful. In this example, we'll assume that her train actually has a value of 3. Then, these cubes will be allowed to ship through 1, 2, 3 to the destination city. The important thing to note about this is that Yellow has passed through an opponent's depot. Every time this happens, the shipper must pay $1 per good shipped to the owner of every depot to use their links. They only have to pay each player once. But if they go through multiple players, they will have to pay each player. Shipping these brown cubes is a very good idea because the current payout is $6 per cube. So, had this been successful, it would be $12 this turn to the yellow player. After all the players have finished moving and taking all their actions, then we move into the upkeep phase. This is where everybody must pay $1 for every cube that they control. That is, a cube that is either inside of their cargo hold in their airship or sitting at a depot. All cubes that players can't afford the upkeep on are jettisoned back into the supply. Another action that players can take is called the route adjustment, and it does pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. Basically, after you've finished your movement, you can move 1 hex in any direction, regardless of which way you were facing when you finished moving. I think of it as an emergency maneuver that you can make after you mess up on your movement step. The last, and arguably most boring action that a player can take on their turn is the soliciting funds action, and that's just simply taking $3 from the bank. The last step of a turn is called the production phase, and it's just basically a maintenance step where you clear all of the demand tiles off of the market and place 1 new good at each factory of the corresponding type. So that's how the rounds work. You'll go through 5 of them, and at the end of the last round, there will be a special clearance phase where every good that's still at a depot that can be shipped into a city is allowed to do so, and every player who does so will get $4 per good. Then points are totaled up to determine the winner. Kings of Air and Steam, what can I say? I mean, it probably shows that I love the game. I mean, it's definitely not a big secret that I like steampunk stuff. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I wasn't expecting to like it, I think, as much as I did. I had very high hopes, and I was not disappointed. Even if it didn't have the steampunk theme to it, I had the feeling it would still be one of my favorite games, if not still my favorite. I really like the variable setup aspect of it. I'm a huge fan of special character powers, and this game actually has kind of not one but two layers of those, with the special movement for the airships and then another special power that each character brings. I think all the powers add a nice little bit of flavor to the game without throwing the balance off completely. It's definitely not what I would call a gateway game or a beginner game. It's probably just a little bit heavier than that. It still is enough on the light end where it's not going to scare people off, I think. I could be saying all these positive things about it because I do tend to win more often than not, but that might just be because I don't get to play it very much. Obviously, I love the art. I'm a huge fan of the big blimps, even though they are perhaps a little bit problematic from a gameplay standpoint because they take up a lot of space on the board. But I also don't think that that's a huge downside either, because it doesn't make the game unplayable. And I'll tell you, when people walk by and they see this game set up, especially in the 7-player full setup, it brings people to a halt, and they all have to look at it and say, "What is that? It's amazing looking." This game was one of the first Undead Viking video review games that I remember watching, and that video was a huge deciding factor in whenever I backed this game. So huge shout out to Undead Viking for making fantastic videos and inspiring me to make my own. I hope you all enjoy watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I hope that you'll join me for some of my other videos that are coming up. I'm going to try to do one board game video every 2 weeks, and I'm going to try to do video game playthroughs every Tuesday and Thursday, but we'll see how that works out. You can also check out my Patreon. I just set one up, and I'll put a link to it in the description. I'm going to make another video of this game with me doing a playthrough about midway through the game, playing 4 players at the same time, and I hope you'll visit that video. I'll put a link to it in the doobly-doo. In the meantime, safe travels.